Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside the Diamonds podcast. I'm your host JC, and I'm joined again tonight by CJ. How you doing, CJ?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Not bad. Sitting down in Virginia Beach, just last
You're
vacation
cooked.
before. Yeah, a little bit today. It's the only day we're gonna get of sun, so we kind of spent it out by the beach all day. But it was hazy all day, so it kind of caught up with me quick. Didn't realize I was getting burnt, which is fine, is what it is. But last little vacation before school starts back up and all the kids' sports start back up, because that'll take up our time probably until next summer when everyone's out. So
Yep.
get away one last time. And I actually last night we got in late. Yesterday was Sunday, so the Cubs and Cardinals were on, so I got to enjoy a little bit of that. At the restaurant right here in the hotel. So that was the most baseball I got to watch this weekend, because it was pretty hectic before leaving, trying to finish everything up and some different things. But excited to be back tonight, covering the trade deadline, what was, and kind of what it looks like now, because the wild card picture, at least in one division, continues to get even muddled even more than what it was the last time we talked. So uh, without any further ado, the only thing I wanted to kind of bring up tonight to kick it off, because I want to get rid of the bad things first, and hopefully we do better than they are. But the Chicago White Sox have lost 20 in a row. No major league team has done that since 1988, and I don't think it's going to get any better for them.
Nope. Nope.
I don't think I've seen I was looking at the standings. I do they get to 50 wins?
No. I mean, it's gonna be close, but I don't know. That's tough. They don't look good at all, and
They need 23 in 62 games, or six, something like that.
watch. They'll make the
Um,
playoffs in September, and they'll get hot, and they'll
let's
just
see
make it
what
over 50.
they are right now, current day, 27 and 87, which is 114 games, which leaves them with 48 games. So they have to be just under 500 for the last. There's no way.
The run differential is disgusting.
Yeah,
Minus
it's not
two
even.
forty seven. When was the last time somebody ever saw that?
I mean, the next closest is 90, 140 when that's the Marlins. No, I'm sorry, 180 with the Rockies.
That's 67 more. That's
It's pathetic. You look at everyone around the league, you see streaks of win two, loss two, win four, lose 20. There's no other team that's got a streak of anything else
isn't
with
this
any
their second?
longevity.
Isn't this their
I can't remember. Their second long one, but not of 20 games.
Oh, that's right.
And they're oh
The last one against the Red Sox.
yeah, it's been pretty ugly. But um with all that said, and just want to get that bad juju out of the way, let's talk about the trade deadline winners. I know that you and I have talked throughout the deadline, during the deadline that day. Why don't you give me your winners first?
Well, the first one is, and they're not my number one winner, but they're definitely winners in my book, is the Miami Marlins. A team that's rebuilding, but at the same time, I guess really not. They're a playoff team last year, and they've just been dealt with injuries all year. I mean, you and I talked at length about how great Yuri Perez looked last year and what we expected this year. He's done for the year. Sandy Alcantara had Tommy John last year. He's done for the year. Jesus Luzardo was the name everybody was going to talk about for the deadline and in the offseason to be traded. He's who knows when he's coming back. So realistically, that team was just done, and it started with the Rise getting traded earlier. Uh,
Yep.
but then they made the moves. They trade Tanner Scott, Jazz Chisholm, Josh Bell, Brian De La Cruz, Trevor Rogers, AJ Puck, and some other bullpen arms. But what they brought back in, they brought in a nice pitching prospect from the Padres and Robbie Snelling. They added to, which I've talked about in my prospect recaps, about they have a good farm system pitching. They just develop pitching. But then now they brought in some bats. They brought in Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers from Baltimore. That Augustin Ramirez catcher from the Yankees is good. De Los Santos needs to be talked about more. He doesn't get covered as much. From what I've seen, he's been pretty good. So they built, their prospect system with the bats now, and so they have something going that I tweeted it out right after the trade deadline and said the Marlins are gonna be a problem come 2027 when all of these names come up, and that window might be closing for the Phillies. We all experienced the Dombrowski effect where he trades away your prospects and he spends money, but the window closes on him. And then the Braves, they have their guys, but you know they're going to start to get older.
Yeah.
And the Mets are the Mets, and the Nationals are going to be right there. But the Marlins have a window now coming in 3 years where they could be up there in and at least even the wild card. And with all these prospects they just acquired, we're hearing these names down the road.
Well, the Marlins aren't afraid to empty their roster when it's needed for the prospects, but they're also not afraid to pull a trigger in the opposite direction if they need to. Use some of these assets that they've got that are a little bit clogging the lanes for other players to get there, that they won't hesitate to make a move if they need to get someone that'll benefit the team for now. They are a very uh, self aware organization where they know where they stand and when to go for it and when not to. It seems. If you look at their runs, they get there, go to the World Series, and then they're gone. The best thing about, like you were saying with these Marlins, they added a lot of bats. Norby, Stores, Ramirez, those guys added with their pitching that they have. It's not a long turnaround if they pan out.
Yep.
So I thought the Marlins again, they were another team for me that was just clearing away, outside of, the people looking at it the way of who's going to win this year. They look a lot at who wins the deadline due to that, the impact for this year. This was another one where I just think it was kind of, unless you're a Marlins fan or a big baseball fan, miss out on how well the Marlins did this deadline.
Yep.
So who was your second team?
The Los Angeles Dodgers. And I mean, the rich get richer. It seems to be always
Yeah.
the case. And we talked last week because the trades had gone through where, they got Rosario and, they added Tommy Edman. And then Michael Kopech looked great in his first relief
Yeah.
appearance. But then they go out and on right before the deadline hits, and they go get a really, at the end of the day, he's probably not going to hit come playoff time. I mean, if he does, I wouldn't be surprised. But really, they got a guy for I think the late innings defensively in center fielding, Kevin Kiermaier.
Hmm.
But then the big move they made, which I was surprised about, was Jack Flaherty. And everything came out the next day. The Yankees were in on him heavily, had the trade done, and then some things came out about his back, and the Dodgers came in right at the last minute and got him. And he didn't disappoint in his first outing. He didn't
No, he
allow a
didn't.
run, 6 innings, 5 hits, 7 Ks, and only walked one. So that's a guy that's definitely turned the corner, figured some stuff out. I really wanted him in Boston. I thought he was a piece to the rotation that that team could have used.
It's,
And they really didn't give up much at the end of the day.
no.
Like Trey Sweeney and Lorenzo to Detroit, and Lorenzo sneaks right in the top 10 quick for them. And
Yeah.
Sweeney is swinging a hot bat now with the Toledo.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, those two guys might turn into something, but at the time of the trade, doesn't seem like much. So the Dodgers, I think they made a nice pivot to be right there with the Phillies. And obviously, like I said earlier in the year, I thought they would lose in the NLCS and, you know, Dave Roberts would be gone. It'd be Alex Cora. I said that at length. But they definitely made the moves that keep them right there, especially after, they DFA Paxton and Kershaw hasn't looked like Kershaw coming out of the gate. So they definitely need pitching, and Flaherty fills that need. Kopech is going to be a great out of that bullpen. And they got, some nice depth now, especially whether or not what Mookie comes back at. The issues with Lux, they and Kike at third, they just DFA'd Kevin Biggio today.
Yeah, I see
So
that. I was gonna bring that up.
they definitely took the deadline and got a lot better, and they seem like a team that's going to cause some havoc come playoff time.
The other thing, just for me, is adding Flaherty it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense with Paxton, but you still don't know what you have in Yamamoto when he comes back either.
Yeah, and I don't think
I was
he's not coming back in September.
I was a little shocked that they let Paxton go so quickly
Hmm.
without knowing, but they still have Bobby Miller or no, Bobby Miller shut down.
He's in AAA, I believe.
I thought he had a good outing recently, but I could be screwing that one up. But it was just odd to me that Paxton went. I thought that they would have made a move for another arm, perhaps. Um, but Flaherty looked good, and if everyone comes healthy and Kershaw can pitch, they'll be fine. They got a decent lead in the West. So,
They
who's your third winner?
do they have a
Well, no,
decent lead?
I, I
They're,
honestly,
that's the thing is they make these moves. They look good, but they're starting to choke things away. That's I think that's why they make the moves. But
yeah,
Padres look good and they're coming. And they were almost my third team, but I went with the Cardinals.
it's yes. Go ahead.
And I went with the Cardinals because I feel like the more I saw that trade with the Dodgers and the White Sox that gave the Dodgers Kopech and Edman, the Cardinals didn't give up really anything except for Tommy Edman, and they got Tommy Pham and Eric Fetty, which they had good pitching, which we talked about going into the season that they were going to be right there because of their pitching. And they add somebody like Fetty who's come over from I think it was the KBO league and he's had a good season.
Yeah,
And then they went out and they added a bullpen arm in Sean Armstrong and moved Dylan Carlson, who I think they're a team like I say with the Red Sox that have a plethora of outfielders, especially in the AAA, that one of those guys is expendable. And so if you can move a guy like Dylan Carlson, get a bullpen arm to help you in the stretch run, it's not a bad move.
they
So
seem to be similar to like the Marlins with pitchers and Tampa Bay with pitchers. The Cardinals just breed or bring up a ton of outfield prospects.
out hitting and pitching. I mean, I talk about Tim Kent's a lot, and Quinn Matthews is another one. He's on the new top 100 that's updated, but those are two guys. And we talk about Mason Wynn, another bat that he looked
He
good
had a
last
home
night.
run last night.
Yep,
Yeah, Marcelo Suna, Randy Rosiana,
yep.
and then jeez, they still have Jordan Walker down at AAA who can't
They
seem
want
to figure it out.
they tried to move him at the deadline.
Yeah, so the Cardinals may have won it, but they did just lose the series against the Cubs,
Yeah, and they're
which
still right there.
yeah, which is tricky. So I I have two winners because I did think the Marlins because we had talked about it, and I liked what the Dodgers did for what they needed to do. But for me, one of the winners was the Cubs. And similar to the Marlins, they held on to James Taillon. They didn't move Cody Bellinger, which to me speaks that they are in belief that he'll be around next year in
Yeah,
that, opt in because he hasn't played well either. And I think he knows that. But as much as I loved Christopher Morel, I was calling for Paredes back in March just because of the type of bat, more consistent, not as big of a swing and miss as Morel was. So I think for the opposite reason of the Marlins didn't give up. They gave up a lot, but they received so much for what they were doing.
right.
Jed Hoyer, love him or hate him, didn't panic. Yeah, it's not the season you want, but at the same time, you've got plenty of young talent now. Let's see how you can finish out this year, where things shake out, see what happens in free agency, and then you've got all these young guys that if you need to make a move here or there to better your roster next year when you have a better idea of what's going on, then you do so.
Hmm.
They didn't panic just to grab stuff for nothing, but Morel for Paredes made a lot of sense to me, and I was happy that they didn't make some of the moves that I was hearing. The only way Bellinger moves is if you know you're not bringing him back or the opt out is in play, because I still think he's their best center fielder all the way around.
Yep.
PCA is great. He's fun to watch, but until he can hit 260, he's just going to hurt you offensively.
Did you see the
My
story about Paredes?
Which one about him going out and thanking the fans or?
So he played 5 straight games against the Reds.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the Rays played the Reds, and then he got traded on the third. Was it the 30th or the 31st? I think it was the 30th. The 30th, and then the Cubs played the Reds right after the Rays did. So
Yeah.
he went from the Rays to the Cubs and played the Reds again. So he had 5 games against the Reds, and then 4 against the Cardinals. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. It's he got to see some hittable pitching. I guess the best way of putting it.
So the whole
Um.
rotation.
Yeah. At least, and all their bullpen arms most likely.
Yep.
Um. But the other NL Central team that I think was quiet but did what they needed to was the Pirates. They brought in Brian De La Cruz. They brought in Nick York, a and Wyatt Sanford. Or no, they signed Wyatt Sanford. Nick York from the Red Sox in that trade for Quinn Priester, who Quinn Priester is most likely a probably blocked with the pitching they've got now. Jared Jones coming back. They've got Bubba Chandler. They've got Paul Skeens. They've got Marco Gonzalez. Where's he going to fit? So
Yep.
they traded him for an infielder, and now they're healthy. And I think with their pitching, I think their best acquisition is coming in Jared Jones, who's ready for a minor league stint or here in a rehab. So that'll be happening soon. But the Pirates, to me, again, nothing really flashy. They didn't go out and do anything huge, but they got what they want and going to put it to use. So those were my two winners, other than like I said, the Marlins and the Dodgers and Cardinals were in there.
Hmm.
I'll start with my losers.
Okay.
One is one that you had, but my biggest loser, and I think my biggest confusion, is Oakland.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it. And if you're moving to Sacramento for, let's say, 2 years, right? You don't, you can't anticipate competing in a what is it, 75 to 7,500 stadium fans, unless they plan on adding seats there, which perhaps they do.
Yeah.
But and I really think it hurt them when Mason Miller broke his hand.
Hmm.
I think regardless of what they were going to say, I think he would have went. Someone would have overpaid, but holding on to the likes of Brent Rooker, who should have went at the deadline, in my opinion, just made no sense to me. And even JP Sears with the arms that were going, I was
Yeah.
a little shocked that he didn't go. And I mean, he was very similar in my eyes to a Kyle Freeland. That what the hell? Not going to hurt you. Throw him at 4 or 5,
Hmm.
and they're going to already be better. Um, and the Twins just acquiring Trevor Richards, there made no sense. Of all the teams that are in the wild card hunt in the AL or in a division battle, they needed pitching as much as anyone in a left-handed starter. They all did, but they made Trevor Richards was their only acquisition. I shake my head at that. It just made no sense whatsoever, and just really really confused of what they're trying to do. I don't know why I missed it and ran over it. The Mariners were a big winner in my
Yeah.
eyes
Yeah. That's the other
with
one I
what they
had.
did, which we I think I kind of glanced over it just because that we covered pretty much everything they did last time.
Yeah.
And so my two losers were just Oakland because none of it makes sense with what's to come, and why would you need them? Because that's 2 years of use that you're going to get out of them and control that is basically meaningless in my eyes with Mason Miller. It just didn't make any sense to me. So, um, who was your first loser?
Well, so I'll piggyback because you said one of mine, and we'll follow it
Yep.
up with the Twins. They were a team, and I think you and I talked about this last week, where we talked about, we could see, maybe it was 2 weeks ago before the trade deadline. We talked about maybe the Red Sox were a team that we could see buying and selling. Where you
Mhm.
move off guys where they're expiring deals or whatever and bring in something. The Twins are against the salary cap, so it was tough for them to bring in anything. And you're in pretty much a close, not even wild card race, but a division race. Like you're not far behind the Guardians, and you see them go out and they add somebody who wasn't even thrown this year in Alex Cobb, and
Mhm.
you don't do anything. Like you said, they needed what was it, a left-handed pitcher,
Yep.
and you got a couple guys you could move and bring
Mhm.
in, free up some salary cap, and you go out and get a left-handed pitcher. But they didn't do anything besides what you said, Richards. And does that really make them any better? Like as a Red Sox fan, I'm more excited about the fact that we have a chance to pass the Twins more than the
Yep.
Royals. We have a chance with this series tonight. You could start making some ground on the Royals, but you should pass the Twins. I don't think that team should really make the playoffs. And the reason why they're so good and what they've done this year is Royce Lewis is one of those names, and he's
Mhm.
been in and out of the lineup all year.
Yeah.
So you take advantage of stuff like that. So that's one of them. Although David Festa has been fun to watch, and he's pitching tonight against the Cubs, and they're up 1-0.
Yep.
So I wonder if they're banking on him to be, granted he's not a lefty, but to be the guy in the rotation that they can trust as an extra arm. Um, my next one,
You have to you have to wonder if their injuries with Joe Miranda, Royce Lewis,
yep,
Carlos Correa, and even some of their outfielders were banged up because they do have a logjam at that middle infield spot and in the corner outfield spots that they could have perhaps moved someone for an
yep.
arm that would have been almost cash in hand, trade even Steven, but they just standing back and just grabbing Trevor Richards is just not going to do it for them.
A guy like Brooks Lee. I mean, and that's probably your
Hmm.
shortstop. What was that play? Oh my lord!
Who was it?
The Cubs game, and they hosed them though. It was like a deep fly ball to like right center field, and they just must have lost it in the lights, and the ball dropped, and they just hosed whoever was trying to score. So I think they kept them to. I think they actually held them. I think it's 1-0 still. Yep. Um. So yeah, I mean, Correa was a name I was interested to see. Like maybe you could get a haul for that prospect wise, because Brooks Lee, they like him a lot. He's been
Yeah.
up most of the year, and it's probably, like I said, the shortstop of the future. I forget when Correa's deal is up. I think he's had a 4-year deal, so I think he's maybe 1 year away from free
Mm.
agency. So I mean that wouldn't have been a bad idea, but maybe that's an off-season move they're looking at. Um,
Yep. They may just realize, like the Marlins, that this is not going to be their year. Play out with what we've got
yep,
and go from there.
it's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
The next one is the Houston Astros, and they went out and got what they needed. I mean, I saw them linked to Jack Flaherty,
Hmm.
uh, but it sounds like Detroit thought they could get more for Flaherty than what the Astros were offering, and from what it sounds like, it was the same deal. But they traded, you know, realistically, two guys that were right in the big leagues to Toronto for Yusei Kikuchi, who, not for nothing, he's pitched well, but he hasn't been
Yep.
the kind of guy you move that kind of talent for.
Nope.
So that should have told you going into the deadline, like this is what the market is. I think the trade actually broke while we were recording,
Yep.
um, but we didn't know what the trade back was. I said it was going to be definitely Jake Bloss because he was scratched, so I figured that was there. But the other pieces moved. It's just, what are you guys doing? You guys don't have a farm system. Like Jacob Melton, I think is the only guy on the Astros I have in the top 100.
Yep.
So like you don't have a farm system to be doing stuff like that where you have an arm and Jake Bloss who's up and people are excited about him, and yeah, we're gonna scratch him and just trade him away for Kikuchi.
Yep.
So, but that's the thing. Like I said you earlier about the teams with the window closing. I think are the Astros that team because Bregman's a free agent after this year, and somebody tweeted the
Yep.
other day about him leaving, and I said he just screams Tiger. So,
I like that better than the pinstripes.
yep, he just AJ Hinch and him just screams it, and like they're losing Urshela. I know they have Jace Young coming up, but you could move Keith to first if Torkelson still struggles and put Young at second, and you got Bregman at third.
That would be an interest. I'd like that a lot more than him going to be the answer over it in New York.
Yeah, well, if they don't get Soto, he might end up. They might just give him the bag, and he might be the answer.
Yeah, no, the Astros definitely got fleeced in that trade and just they overpaid. And I just don't. I know they were in panic mode because of that window, so I guess that makes some sense. They did exactly what some other teams were reluctant to do.
Hmm. And the final one is the White Sox. They moved off. Granted, they did move off the Eloy Jimenez contract, but you didn't trade Luis Robert, and you didn't trade Garrett Crochet. And you and I just talked about it. They've lost 20 straight.
Hmm.
Crochet, I think, was realistically him and his agent shot himself in the foot with their comments.
You mentioned it last week.
The White Sox not saying, like, the White Sox just not wanting to move Robert was interesting. Like, I don't get what you're building for. Like, you don't have much talent in the pipeline coming up, besides maybe Drew Thorpe, who's already up, and Noah Schultz, who looks pretty good. But there's maybe Kiro, but there's not much other than that that I can think of. Oh, there is one more. It's Montgomery, Colson
Yeah,
Montgomery.
Colson
So
Montgomery, the
there is
shortstop.
some talent, but if that's those four guys aren't going to be the end all be all for your future. So, moving Luis Robert and getting a haul for him, you probably could get one or like the way the market was, you probably could have gotten one or two top prospects for him.
At least
Or even Crochet, you could have gotten two or three. Like,
it'll be very telling because I thought about this in regards to the other side of the story. Right, we already knew that the demand and seeing what others were giving. But at the same time, what were the questions with both these guys? Robert's his injury history, and Crochet is a reliever, now a starter. So, do you want to trade for someone that's going to shit the bed on the back end because of innings? If they go out and Robert can stay healthy for the rest of this year, for the next 48 games, and Crochet can go and stay steady,
yep,
what's the return like at the deadline? Or not the deadline, the winter meetings?
yep.
Can
That's
they
what
help themselves by staying healthy and maybe answering some of those questions?
that's where I think Crochet is going to get moved. I think the fact that, like he said, was I want an extension to pitch in the postseason. Nobody wanted him at that point. Let's see if you
Hmm.
last the season. Let's see what you do, and then maybe we'll trade for you in the offseason, give you the extension you want. I
Yeah,
think that's exactly the way they're going.
prove it. That's the way I'd look at it. Is he's got to prove it, and I think what happens is Max Fried signs somewhere, and it's a bidding war between two teams.
Hmm.
First call should be the losing team.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Who didn't get him? And then Robert is a guy that you've got a lot of teams that have some guys that could move on in free agency, and he could be one that could be talked about there.
Hmm.
At that, like, I mean, I hate to say it, but the Yankees, if they don't get Soto, they're gonna need someone to pair with Judge out there. Stanton's not getting any younger. They got Dominguez, but he doesn't seem to want to stay healthy at all.
Spencer Jones. We'll talk about
Spencer
him a little
Jones is a
later,
good,
but
yeah, he's a good one. So right now, I think the White Sox shot themselves in the foot.
yep.
But on the other side is like, to me, it's like the only hope they have is that these two guys can stay healthy the rest of the way, and then they can get some sort of return.
They can get a haul.
Because if what happens if they go out and Robert misses 20 games,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden Crochet all of a sudden starts, you know, getting tired, lasting 5 innings and falls off.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden that window, we talked about teams windows closing, those players' trade value just plummets. And now now a team that can't even win 50 games in a year is stuck with two more guys hoping that that's just going to change. I mean, Crochet, they can work on that. They can build up the stamina. Robert just seems to be someone that doesn't and can't stay healthy. So it's going to be very interesting. But that's a mess out in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, let's take a deeper dive at the NL wild card right now, where it stands. I'm going to give a brief rundown, and then I'll let you kind of step in and talk about where you want to talk. Um, the Braves right now hold the first wild card, and then wait a minute, hold on, my computer just froze. Just 1 second. Sorry about that. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yep.
All right, good. I just had to refresh it. So right now, as it stands, the Braves are in the first wild card spot with a game and a half up. Then the Padres with a game and a half in the second wild card spot, with the Diamondbacks at the last spot. It's followed by the Mets, Cardinals, Pirates, San Francisco Giants, who are 7-3, and then the Chicago Cubs. The 7-3 Giants are one that I wanted to talk about just a minute ago, because they didn't make any significant moves, but the guy that we trashed on quite a bit, Blake Snell, comes out and throws a complete
Yeah.
game shutout.
No
You
hitter.
know, no hitter. Can't go past the fifth inning. He's washed up. This is his off year, and he just comes out and dominates. If they get that Blake Snell for the rest of the way, and they can get hot, they're a team with Kyle Birdsong, who's most likely going to come up and pitch now, and be the fifth guy in the spot. And the rotation's been doing well. They It's far fetched, but they could certainly climb. They've got the talent to climb that ladder and make it interesting. But of that rundown of the National League wild card, what stands out to you?
I want to start with the Braves safe. They went out and
Mm,
got Jorge Soler, and I mean, they're getting Max Fried back, but they just lost Ronaldo Lopez. He's on the injured list.
yep,
And, they lost two straight to the Marlins. That's a series that you should have taken at least three or four. They ended up splitting. Now they're, a half game lead over, what is it? A half game lead over the Diamondbacks. They're 2 games up on the Mets, which is now 1.5 because the Mets won today. I kept saying the Mets. I think that's a team that realistically, if this Braves struggle continues, I mean, not really a struggle because they're 6-4 in their last 10, but the Mets could very well catch up. I'm still not sold on the Diamondbacks being there, and the fact that they are is kind of surprising to me.
yep.
Uh, I stand by. I think it's going to be one team from each division. I really think one of those central teams is going to get in. I think the Padres are getting in. I'm 100% on. I think the Padres are getting in,
Well, they're getting Tatis hopefully back. They Depending on how they play will depend on when he comes back. I think
and I think Darvish might be coming back soon. But that's still hit or miss. Like
up in the air, no one knows. But they
yeah,
got Perez. Martin Perez is someone that is pitched well his first time out there for them. He's a guy for me that is a stopgap lefty veteran that can come in and kind of piece that together for them until you comes back. Which Darvish is 37 years old,
yeah.
and no one really knows what he's going through right now because they've kept it very hush hush. But the
Something family.
Padres, yeah, nothing else has been really said about it, so that'll be interesting.
And then I think I think the Braves, even though I asked the question, are they safe? I think they really are. I think they have the talent there. So then that goes to the last playoff spot. And I just think there's something about baseball all around wants the Pirates there to showcase Jones, Skeens,
Yep,
and all the talent, like Mitch Keller. So I really think they have a good shot to get there. The Cardinals lost today. I don't think the Pirates play today,
I don't believe
do
so.
they? They do not. So they're pretty much gonna be tied.
Yeah,
Um, and then the Pirates. This is their week. This is the week where you are out of it, really, if you don't have a good week.
yep,
Because they got, and I put it on the sheet I sent you earlier on the rundown. They got three against the Padres just after to start the week, and then they got three against the Dodgers this weekend. You
yep,
go 2-4, 1-5, 0-6, you're all
yep,
done. But
yep.
Skeens will probably pitch in there one probably once. So there's your stopgap, hopefully, at least to keep a skid. And I don't know. I
More
mean, I
importantly,
think
they need to
the
be,
Cardinals did the moves to get there, but they got a tough stretch too. Three against the Rays and two against the Royals after today.
and they
The
haven't
Mets
played
got the
well.
Rockies and three against the Mariners. Like that's the Braves have the best week. I mean, they got a tough one with three against the Brewers, but you know that's a chance to help the Cardinals maybe or the Pirates if they can do something. Then the Rockies. The Padres have the Pirates and the Marlins. So again, that's just a chance for you to make some distance and put yourself really into that playoff spot. The Diamondbacks have it tough too.
Yep.
Three with the Guardians, four with the Phillies. The Giants, they like you said, that's their this is their week to make their statement. If they really want to be in the run and they really want to make that push for the playoffs, you have four against the Nationals and three against the Tigers. If you go 5-2 this week, after being 7-3, so what you'd be 12-5 in your
Yeah.
last 17. That gets you right. That gets you right into that conversation. And
They
like I
could
said,
real they could realistically end this. They could gain 2 games, if not more, depending
yeah,
on
yeah,
the Mets should hold their ground, but the Cardinals, the way they're playing, and the Pirates, with who they've got to play, they could. Washington is isn't great, and they
they're fun
could
to
be tough.
watch.
They're fun to watch, but I do think the Giants. There's just something about the Giants. They've been lurking, 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 and now it would be interesting to see where they can go because I know they play the Diamondbacks still this year. That would be fun to see them creep up, be a couple games back, and go into a series where they can even themselves out with the Diamondbacks. And who knows with the Padres with what happens? It's going to be the National League wild card right now. We stopped at the Giants because I think that's the most realistic thing. Even if the Cubs go on a tear, which they could, I don't. I think the most likely jumper, if you would, in this the leapfrog, better yet, from say the Cardinals down would be the Giants. I could see the
Yep,
Giants pushing that last 10 days to make a run. The Pirates, I think, unfortunately, this stretch that they've got these next 6 games will be very telling. If they can split them, win one series, lose one series, that would again be interesting. It's if they can win the Padres series, I think that helps them more than losing the Dodgers. It's still losses or whatever, but they're
yep,
they're pinning 2 losses on the Padres in this
yep,
race that would make more sense. Um, it's crazy how close and tight this is right today. Next week could look and should look different
yep. Is it
unless they all
unrealistic
just play 500.
that the schedule for the Giants, with the Diamondbacks being the team that's holding that final spot, that they could realistically just be 1 to 2 games back? I mean, think about it. The Diamondbacks have three against the Guardians and four against the Phillies, whereas the Giants have four against the Nationals and three against the Tigers. Realistically, and they're 4.5 behind. You go 5-2, the Diamondbacks go 2-5, and granted, if everything between you evens out and they go, 3-3, 2-4,
Yeah,
you could be sitting what 1.5 games behind.
yeah,
I mean, it's not out of the realm that they're right there after next week. Like you said, it could all change in the blink of an eye.
it's going to be close. So, with that, just we'll give a quick rundown of the American League wild card right now. Right now, the Yankees have a 4 game lead at the top spot in the wild card, followed by the Twins, who have a half game lead over Kansas City currently, who is the last playoff wild card spot. Then you've got the Boston Red Sox, who are 2.5 games back, but like we said, open this week with the Royals, so they could very easily, depending on how that plays out, close that gap. Tampa Bay Rays are 5 games back. Houston Astros are 5 game backs, and then after that, I think it drops off, and
Yep.
you've got the Rangers at 9.5. I really think the Astros are that bottom layer right now at 5 games. I think 5 games right now is the cutoff. 9.5 to me is a lot to make up.
I think those
And
AL West teams are all fighting for the division, anyways. I think it's Rangers, Astros, Mariners all for the division. They're not focused on the wild card.
yeah, and that right now the Astros, I believe, are a game back from the Mariners, and
Yes,
then you've got that means the Rangers are 4.5, 5.5 games back. So yes, I think whoever doesn't win the West, I could. unlike what you mentioned for the National League with one wild card from each, I could see two from the American League East or two from the Central, and
Yep.
just that be it.
Yep.
Um, so very interesting with the wild card. Anything you'd like to add with the American League wild card? And then I'm going to throw, before we get into the minor leagues, I want to throw something out to you that I heard, and I want your opinion, but I didn't want to share it with you because I want to get your. I'm not sure if you saw it, but we'll see. So anything on the American League wild card?
I just think the Twins are gonna somehow fall off coming up. I think
Yeah.
it's. I think we're like you said. It's gonna be. I think it's two American League East teams, which be biased as I can be, but it's Red Sox, Yankees, or it could be Red Sox, Orioles. I mean, I don't know. And then I think the Royals are just good. I think they're gonna get there. I mean, we talked about that in the off season coming into the season, where the pitching additions they made just made them significantly better.
Is
So
Bobby Witt undervalued?
no, I think the tough part for him, we're in that conversation where we had for the last 4 years, where Judge, was the shadow of Shohei, but we all
Mm.
knew who Aaron Judge was. I think that's the same thing we're seeing now. Is Judge is having this season where Bobby Witt, if it's not for Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt's the MVP this year, and it's not even close.
Okay, so that's you and I. We watched the game.
Yep.
Any other, you take some random Joe that's a big fan for the Texas Rangers or the Anaheim Angels or the New York Mets. Where do they see Bobby Witt?
I think you're starting to see him now. I think
Okay.
this is his breakout season where he's starting to make, like you and I know about him from years before, but I think this is
Yep.
his breakout season for the mainstream fan.
Okay. That was just something to me. Like I absolutely love watching him hit. And I watched something, if it was this morning, I had to read the subtitles because everyone else was sleeping, but they were breaking down his swing. And it's awesome. Any like young kid that's playing baseball should watch that breakdown and just how he stays balanced throughout his swing with his power. It's because he's a little guy too. In stature, compare you throw him up against some of these other guys that are hitting bombs.
Yep.
So that was just a question for me. So I love AJ Pierzynski. Loved him as a catcher. He was almost like a Brad Marchand to me, where you either loved him or hated him. If he's on
Yep.
your team, you loved him. If he wasn't, then you hated him. But there was something he said the other day, and we talked about Angel Hernandez, about how awful he was, and then he retired or whatever. So AJ's talking on this podcast, I believe it was, and I don't know the name of it.
Foul territory.
Foul Territory. Did you see it?
No, I'm just familiar with the podcast.
Okay. So he said, what if he knew that they wouldn't all out fire him and he wasn't going to retire? But if he was bad enough, they would give him a settlement and he could walk out the door. He
That doesn't
showed
surprise me.
he showed the last few calls that he made, the last three strikes, and they were a good foot out and never like, and it's not close in terms of where it crossed the plate and then where it ends up. He said, I haven't heard anything, I haven't seen anything, but if you're a smart man and you've been this bad for that long and you still have a job and you're just sick and tired of doing it, and then finally they come out and give you perhaps a settlement. I mean, you see it in the workplace all the time where
Yep.
people have the companies by the, you know, short and curlies and they can't do anything. So they have to give them a settlement to get them out.
Yep.
So it was just an interesting thought because it's something that any baseball fan, even a novice fan, knows who Angel Hernandez is and how
My
bad
dad,
he is.
my dad, who doesn't even really watch baseball, knows who Angel Hernandez is. So I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know.
So I just thought it was very interesting. And again, it's kind of like all these conspiracy theories that you hear about politics or UFOs or whatever. That
Yep.
there's no detail to it, but to hear AJ bring it up was interesting because the guy knows the game. He knows a lot about the game, and he knows a lot about he was a catcher, right? So
Yep.
he's got some sort of relationship, one way or the other, than different than a second baseman would with some of these guys. So I take a little bit of what he says more more seriously, and with a little bit more validity to it,
Yep.
because he's not going to just throw at anything that's stupid
No.
and far fetched. So that was just something to me that, like, I was like, holy cow, if if that's the case, Angel Hernandez has been playing chess while everyone else thought he was just playing checkers and piss poor.
Yeah.
The guy was just bored. You know what I mean? He's like a weatherman that's wrong 65% of the time, but you see him on TV every single night.
Yep.
Nothing's changing. So that was just something to me that I wanted to write to you about it this past week, and I'm like, nah, I gotta wait and just kind of see if he heard it first, because I need to process it a little bit myself too, because it's pretty far fetched, but at the same time,
It makes
knowing
sense.
what I know, it makes sense. I
Yep.
see this shit at work all the time, and it's not easy to just fire people anymore.
No.
So if that's truly the case, and even if it's not, then you have to wonder how much of this Angel Hernandez poor calls was just to stay relevant.
Yeah.
How many other umpires, other than Jerry West, who's since retired, how many other umpires do you really know?
CB Buckner, and then
Buckner.
obviously Jim Joyce, but that's
Yeah,
for obvious
well,
reasons.
yes, of course. But that's four. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
it was pretty interesting to me. So that was just a little piece that for me that was interesting that I thought about, and I wanted to bring it up. So just to kind of finish up and wrap up, we got a couple of more topics to cover. I wanted to get, and I'm glad looking at your sheet. I was going to yell at you if you didn't have him. Go through your minor league players of the week, and number two is the one that should have been there because I've been watching quite a bit of him.
So the tough part for me was I had one pitcher, a bunch of hitters, but the hitters are so similar that it was hard to leave any of them off. There was one I left off, and I kind of debated putting him back in, but I didn't. So we'll start with the pitcher. I mean, this is a guy I talk about, I feel like, every week.
Yep.
And I believe I saw something about he might be getting promoted to AAA pretty soon. There's been talks of him being in the bullpen come September, but it's the mind. And if you haven't had a chance to look, the
Yes, you
new
updated him.
top 100 for August following the trade deadline is out on the website. So he is now the 94th ranked prospect on my top 100. It's Brandon Sproat. He's a double A right-handed pitcher for the New York Mets, and he got to start the other day going 5 innings, didn't allow a run, gave up 2 hits, didn't issue a walk, and struck out 13. This guy, again, I talk about him, I feel like, every week. You got to watch him. He's pitching right now in double A at the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. I tried to see, I have to figure out if I can make it work if they do come back. I haven't had a chance to see if they do come back, but I want to go to the Fisher Cats game up in New Hampshire and see if I can see him pitch, but we'll have to see how that works out. So we'll move right along to the hitters, and I have one, two, three. I have four hitters. So the first one is your guy, 93rd ranked prospect, Cam Collier, played a high A in the Cincinnati Reds organization. Last week he went 8 for 17 with 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 8 runs scored, and 3 walks. This guy, high A too, so you mean
Yeah.
probably got, what, 2 years maybe before you see him up with the Reds, but
Yep.
it's an issue we talked about in the offseason where they have a log jam in the infield where something's going to have
Hmm.
to happen. But it's a good week for him. Next one is the big one. I just said his name a little while ago. I got to imagine he's going to be up there, if not by the end of this year, at the start of next year. It's Spencer Jones. He's a 68th ranked prospect. He's played at Double A Somerset for the New York Yankees. He went 9 for 22 last week with 4 doubles, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 6 walks, and 2 stolen bases. Not a bad week. Your next one is your guy. Another one I'm
Yeah.
surprised you
He
didn't
he
mention his
just got
name.
he just got promoted.
He is at AAA.
Yeah. Or he's getting promoted, whether it been today or
It'll
tomorrow.
probably be tomorrow when they start playing again.
Yep.
The 46th ranked prospect, Matt Shaw from the Chicago Cubs. He was playing at Double A, now promoted from sounds like to AAA. He had a hit in every game last week.
Yep.
and he went 14 for 27 with a triple, a home run, 3 RBIs, 9 runs scored, 3 walks, and 3 stolen bases. The final
He's a
one,
good one.
he's starting to figure it out. I think he got off to a little
Hmm.
slow start to start the year, but starting to put it together. So just like this next guy, who is the 47th ranked prospect, it's Dalton Rushing, Double A for the Dodgers. He went 9 for 23 last week with a double, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and 3 walks. So, I mean, that was a guy that I was surprised wasn't moved um, during the deadline. He was a name that everybody talked about for a big name pitcher, and ends up, silencing the critics on the trade deadline front, and goes out and has one of his best weeks of the season. The other two things, unless you want to talk about any of the prospects,
I think the you're gonna see for prospects. I think with especially Matt Shaw. I think it's Matt Shaw. I think Owen Cassie is moving up to AAA as well. I think they're preparing them for the September call ups
yep,
because similar to what you said about the Reds, in terms of their infield depth, the Cubs have some decisions to make of their own
yep,
coming up. So I think that it'll be very interesting. I wouldn't say I'm excited yet because I want to see how the playoffs turn out and how that tightens up. But I'm very interested to see where some of these teams that are out of it, what they do and who they allow to play and show because it's going to be a little telling into what to expect for next year. So with Matt Shaw especially, and I really would like to see Owen Cassidy come up, but I don't want to see Ian Happ go. So that's a spot there where the Cubs are kind of, you know, they're tight in the outfield right now, and
I
there's
want to
some
see
stuff to be done.
I want to see some of those Rockies prospects come up. That's what I'm waiting for. That team I really like watching, so I really
Do
want
they
to see
need?
those guys.
Should they wait?
You could, but why not let those guys see some big league pitching now? I mean,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
guy
but
that's
do
not
you
even
wait till September? Is my point.
there's a guy that's not even in the top 30 anywhere, but Grant Lavigne. He's playing at
Yep.
AAA for Albuquerque. He's been pretty well. Um, so that's just something. But two call ups that happened this week that we should talk about is starting with the 16th ranked prospect Kobe Mayo. He hasn't had a great start to getting his call up. He really got called up after the trade deadline. He went 0 for 9 so far with 2 walks and a run scored. But the big one, making the most of his second call up, is the number one overall prospect, Jackson Holiday,
Yep.
who, since getting called up, is 7 for 18 with a double, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 5 runs scored, and 2 walks. And he made a statement, I believe it was in his first game since getting called up. He hits a grand slam, which was his first home run of his career. And I mean, clearly, he got hot at the right time down in AAA. They made the right call bringing him up, and that transitioned right to the big league level. And he's still hot. I mean, he looks good. Can he sustain it? You know what happens when he goes back to that slump? Because it happens. It's a long
Yep.
stretch run. He gets back into a slump, and what does he do then? But we'll have to see. But I'm glad to see he's hitting the ball and he's back up and with the big club.
Well, they say it's what 90% mental,
Yeah,
10% physical.
yeah,
And for a young kid like that, a slump when you're talked about, and his dad followed him around to almost every series he played.
yep,
There's a lot of un underlying pressure there for that young kid, and it got to him a little bit. He went down, took him a little bit to even figure it, get back to this point. So hopefully, maturity wise, and that experience will benefit him. And he is one I'm rooting for. And it was nice to see the grand slam ball, the kid that caught it, a young kid, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. They pulled him into the stadium and into a room, and he got to meet Jackson. So that was really cool. It was nice to see that side of the story. So yeah, those two guys getting called up, interesting top prospects. Within the top 20. With Jackson at number one and Kobe at 16. So um, let's talk. This is the first time I'm interested in your matchups, but they weren't my picks.
So for the week one, I did the Phillies and the Dodgers because it's going to be most likely your
Mhm.
NLCS, expect to be your NLCS preview. And then the weekend, Guardians Twins. And the reason I went Guardians Twins is I say the Twins aren't going to get there, but if they want to change my mind, this is the weekend to do it. I think they're four and
Right.
a half back entering play tonight.
Yep.
So if you can somehow make that, three and a half, You go in, you take 2 out of 3 from the Guardians, maybe even sweep, and you're right there for the division. Or you open the door where you do that job. You have a tough week. You go into that series and you do your job against the Guardians, and the Royals come in and take the door.
Hmm.
So it's a big series this weekend.
So for my week series is one that we talked about earlier, and I was looking at this earlier today, the Padres and Pittsburgh, because agreed, this week for Pittsburgh is going to be a killer week, and it will make or break their playoff hopes. Unfortunately, tomorrow night they start off facing Dylan Cease, who has pitched pretty damn well for the Padres this year, and they counter with Bailey Falter. And San Diego misses Skeens. Skeens will pitch against the Dodgers in the weekend series, but it's going to be a tough sled for the Pirates because they face Michael King on Wednesday, and then they'll end up facing Randy Vasquez. So the rubber game of that 3 game series is probably going to be a high scoring one with Randy Vasquez versus Luis Ortiz, but that's a big one for the Pirates where they need to have a good showing. And if they can win 2 of those 3 games, maybe lose the game to Cease, pull out the 2 other games against Michael King and Randy Vasquez, that sets them up knowing they've got Skeens and Keller going against the Dodgers to give them a chance to maybe, make a push at this. My weekend series is another one that has playoff implications, and it is 2 teams interleague. It's the St. Louis Cardinals against the Kansas City Royals, where they both are up there trying to fight, trying to move, climb that ladder. The Royals, depending on what happens this week against the Red Sox, are going to need a strong series against the Cardinals. And just the opposite, the Cardinals need to rebound after losing that series to the Cubs. They already lost today. They need to go into the weekend and settle themselves and get themselves back in a position of stability and make that final run. So that'll be an interesting matchup for me. Plus, just watching Mason Wynn and Bobby Witt do what they do. So those are my 2 matchups. Big playoff implications. And it'll be very interesting this time next week when we sit down to take a look at the standings and see where people are.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we've got to pay attention to is the trades that could happen through waivers in the upcoming weeks.
Well, that's all gone.
Oh, is it all done now?
Yeah, that's no longer a thing. It's now all minor league trades. You can't. I don't believe you can't trade anymore. That's all gone
Why
because they
did
all
I
say that
think
once the deadline hits, that that's it. That's your team.
I thought that someone had posted that today because I thought that was the case, but I thought I saw that posted. If so, ignore me. Just call it too much sun today.
They can do a minor league deal. So if the guy's on a minor league contract, he can get
Oh,
moved in
oh,
that case.
okay.
I
Minor
believe
league.
that. I
Yeah.
believe that's how that works. I believe if he's on a minor league deal, it's not part of the big league club. So,
Okay. Well,
and
that's
maybe if
on
he's
me.
not, maybe if he's not in the 40 man roster, I forget.
Okay.
There might be some stipulations, but they always say it's like if your team after the deadline now is your team.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will adjust that. And sorry about that
No,
snafu.
you're good. I'm still confused about it too. So I mean, you're not alone.
Well, I thought for some reason I read something or heard something earlier today, but I was kind of scrolling through rather quick. But anything else you have to add this week? I know it's kind of a
Nothing.
tough one. Just
Nothing.
want to. What's the score of that Twins Cubs game?
Still 1-0 Minnesota. Cubs only have 1 hit. Although it might be two now. There's a guy on second, so I didn't see what happened. I was watching the Red Sox game.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
it's two
Red
nothing
Sox are
Twins.
Red Sox are up 2-1, right?
It's 2-2 now.
Shit. Okay. All
So
right.
I'll
Well,
finish
that's
watching that game.
yep. That's all I've got. I mean, again, I glad I was able to get this done while on vacation. I know you're off next week, right?
Yep.
And you leave. Okay, so we'll see if we figure something out. If not, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and if not, maybe we'll surprise you and have one out next week. Um, appreciate everyone joining. And CJ, I appreciate you putting everything up with the minors. I would suggest you connect your new rankings to this one is up, so people can click right on it. It's
Yep.
a great informational piece for anyone that loves minor league baseball or just wants to see where maybe some of their competitors or even their team have players on the list and when they're where they're playing right now and get a little bit more information on them.
It also includes the some of the newly drafted players.
Nice.
There's I think 6 or 7. There's a
Yep.
couple other ones that will probably be in September's, but I just didn't have them making the cut this month, and we'll have to see what happens. And guys can fall out anytime. So those 90 spots are always up for grabs. I mean, I don't think Sprout's going anywhere, and if Collier keeps doing what he did last week, he's staying too. But we'll see. So if you get a chance to check it out, go ahead. It also is linked to some player profiles. Some of them aren't made yet. Some of them, for the most part, most of them have player profiles. I think there's probably like maybe 15 at most that don't have player profiles done. That'll be an off-season project for me and you.
Okay.
But if you want to take a look, by all means, it's right there on the top website. If you go to insidethediamonds.com, right in the top, you'll see prospects. There's June, April, or March or April, one of the two, and then August.
Perfect. All right. I really do appreciate you joining me tonight. Everyone that's listening, I appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for next week's episode. If it's not out, we'll skip a week and be back when CJ's back from vacation. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and looking forward to talking more baseball when you get back.
Have a great week, everybody.